So here's the most recent satellite imagery from Hurricane Dorian. As the latest 2 p.m. advisory from the National Hurricane Center, it's a Category 3 hurricane, a major hurricane with winds around 115 miles an hour. So changes from this advisory, timing of the storm has slowed further compared to recent advisories, and it's now a major hurricane. There's still a large spread in track guidance, which is going to have very large impacts, or which is going to bring large changes in impact to the area. And the one thing that's going to be important for all of us to watch is the timing of Dorian's northward turn across the Florida Peninsula. If Dorian turns earlier, as noted by the National Hurricane Center forecast, we're going to see less impacts across a majority of the area, and the storm will be further east. However, if the storm turns later across western portions of the peninsula, we could see more impacts, especially across southeast portions of the Big Bend and along the I-75 corridor up into south central Georgia. At this time, much of the heavy rain that's forecast with Dorian will be focused east of Tallahassee and Albany. As far as impacts from Dorian, we could see them begin as early as Monday night, but I want to stress that this is the earliest reasonable time, and because Dorian has been trending slower with each passing update, we're going to the most likely impacts are most likely going to occur after Monday night and into Tuesday. Here's just a regional overview of the tropical storm wind speed probabilities. The chance for tropical storm force winds remains mostly similar to the last few forecasts. And as I go ahead and advance to the next slide, we'll zoom in on a more local view here. So again, with this update, the chance for tropical storm force winds has remained mostly similar to the last few forecasts, but I do want to make note of some changes, especially across south central Georgia and across southeast Big Bend. The chance for tropical storm wind speeds have increased for locations along the I-75 corridor and for other locations near the southeast Big Bend. These probabilities, as we're seeing right now, for example, in Cross City, we're seeing a 5 in 10 chance for tropical storm force winds, and up in the portions of Perry and as we go to the Valdosta, the chances for each location decrease to around 3 in 10. And one thing I want to make note here with these tropical storm force wind probabilities is these are based on the current forecast tracks from NHC. If Dorian trends further west, we are going to see these probabilities increase across portions of the I-75 corridor and possibly as far west into Tallahassee and Tipton. But again, we're going to need to pay attention to future forecasts here. The earliest reasonable time of arrival for tropical storm force winds is now Monday night into Tuesday morning. However, as mentioned earlier, forecast timing has been trending slower, so there's still plenty of time for this to change. We're most likely going to see tropical storm force winds anytime on Tuesday or into Tuesday evening, as noted by the graphic on the left. As for rainfall amounts, generally 1 to 3 inches are possible across much of the area Tuesday through Friday, but higher totals are currently in the forecast of higher totals of 3 to 6 inches are currently in the forecast for locations east of Tallahassee and Albany. Forecast rainfall amounts with Dorian are very sensitive to its future track. These amounts are likely to go up if Dorian's tracks shift further west. Heavy rainfall is possible beginning Tuesday, but we'll most likely see the heaviest rain from Dorian Wednesday through Friday. Ahead of Dorian moving into the area, we'll see scattered showers and thunderstorms over the Labor Day weekend. So kind of summing up the forecast here, the changes from yesterday is the timing of Dorian has slowed further. It is now a major hurricane with sustained winds of 115 miles an hour. I want to note there is still a very large spread in track guidance, which has important impacts to the area. Timing of Dorian's northward turn is going to be the key to figuring out what kind of impacts we see across our portion of the country. If it makes an earlier turn, as noted by current National Hurricane Center forecast, we're going to see less impacts along with the storm further east of the area. However, if it turns later, we have the potential to see more impacts, especially across the Big Bend. At this time, much of the heavy rain threat will be focused east of Tallahassee and Albany, but this is subject to change as the future tracks of Dorian shift further west. And lastly, when we could see these impacts arrive, we could see them begin as early as Monday night. But again, this is the earliest reasonable case, and with forecasts trending slower, we'll most likely see these impacts on Tuesday or later. So that's all we have. That's all we have now for you guys. We'll go ahead and unmute the line for questions.
All participants are now muted. Press star 6 to unmute your line.
Alrighty, so the line should be unmuted. If you guys have any questions, please press star 6 to unmute your line, and we'll be here to take questions.
When is the most reasonable time you think you're going to know when this thing is going to turn and which way it's going to turn?
Well, current forecasts from the Hurricane Center have the storm turning sometime on Monday across the peninsula, turning north and riding along the east coast of Florida. As for when we think we're going to have better certainty in the track, generally as the closer Dorian makes to the coast, we'll have better certainty. I would first guess I would give it at least another 24 to 36 hours before we have a much better idea of what's going to happen with Dorian. And as soon as we get the latest information from the National Hurricane Center, we'll be forwarding that to you guys.
Okay, so you're saying minimum 24 hours before we're going to have a good idea of where it's going to turn.
Yeah, so yeah, at least in the next 24 to 36 hours, we're going to have a much better idea. Again, there's still a large spread in the model guidance, and we're keeping an eye on this and for any trends of that reducing.
Okay, thank you.